Welcome to the Luke Macias Show. We have had a very busy week, and I'm going to record this episode and then have a 4-hour drive to a couple political events in North Texas. So let's get quickly to a handful of things that I think are on my radar that should be on your radar that have implications for the direction that Texas takes. Let's get to the show. I received a little bit more positive feedback than normal on last week's episode, and I appreciate those of you who emailed, who texted, who reached out and just said that you appreciated the words and reflections on Charlie Kirk's life and the things that we specifically can do as Texans, to take ownership of where we are and what we should be doing. So as individuals, as citizens, as Christians, and then as Texans, those are unique realities for you that are not true for everybody. And the question is, as you look at the life of Charlie Kirk, how then should you live? When you look at his testimony and the work that the Lord's clearly doing as a result of his assassination. If you did not have a chance to listen to last week's episode, you can go back and watch it or listen to it. But I have a couple things to talk about. First and foremost, to go back to that issue, I am very pleased to see that a number of public school teachers in Texas were fired as a result of them celebrating the assassination of Charlie Kirk. That's right. We had public school teachers. These are people that are entrusted with watching over our children. They are entrusted with the care and nurture and maturing of many in our population. And these public school educators were celebrating the assassination of Charlie Kirk. The governor called for their termination. Multiple legislators, including Briscoe Cain, as an example, called for the firing of a public school teacher in his district who was caught celebrating the death, digitally dancing on the grave of Charlie Kirk, and she was fired. The school board unanimously voted to terminate her as a teacher at that school. You have the right to say anything you want, but your employer has the right to fire you for anything you say. That is how it works in the state of Texas, and I'm glad that it works that way. So there are a number of those instances happening across the state just yesterday, and I won't go to this clip. In fact, I might as well go to the clip because it's like a minute and a half. So this is a minute and a half clip of like a 3-minute video, but this was just something that this public school teacher was talking about. I already did a bit of episode on SB 12, so I won't dwell on this, but y'all just deserve to see this, okay? This is a public school teacher. It was like a 4-minute clip, and I just cut it down to like a minute and 20 seconds of this public school teacher trying to tell Texans about this crazy Senate Bill 12 bill. Let's just go to the clip real quick.
And as a teacher, as a parent, as someone who has seen the good that these clubs can do, I think that's a really awful provision. It also has another component that forbids schools from using a trans or non-binary student's pronouns or chosen name, even, and this is key, even if that's what the parents want. So this is not really a parents' rights bill. But the bill also has some aspects that could affect the books that students are able to access in their classrooms and school libraries. So on top of everything, Senate Bill 12 is a don't say gay bill, like the one that was passed in Florida a couple of years ago. It forbids instruction, guidance, activities, or programming on gender identity or sexual orientation. Now, the House version of this bill, for just a hot minute, limited that to classroom instruction, and it specified that it did not include, quote, the display or provision of literature or other material that is unrelated to the course or subject being taught. But in the final version of the bill, that language was removed, making it very likely that this bill, once it becomes law, will be used to argue for the removal of books with LGBTQ themes, characters, or authors. So you put SB 12 together with the other laws that have been passed in the last 2 sessions, and it now appears that Texas school libraries and classrooms are forbidden from containing books that someone judges to be indecent, profane, pervasively vulgar, educationally unsuitable, sexually explicit, or relating to sexual orientation or gender identity.
I want to hone in on one thing that public school teacher said, and that public school teacher might be one of those that also danced on the grave of Charlie Kirk. First of all, he talks about these Gay Sexuality Alliance clubs that unfortunately we got rid of. We did get rid of them in the Senate version. As y'all recall, the House put them back in. They wanted to protect the clubs. Representative Alan Schoolcraft fought to put those clubs back in. There was dispute and debate and some parliamentary maneuvers to prevent that amendment from going on. But then in the course of the negotiations, the Texas Senate held strong and forced the club ban back in. And what we now know is that those clubs were very prevalent all through out K through 12 education, including some second grade. I mean, in second grade, you could go to a gender sexuality club, right? And so you have Frank bemoaning that a little bit. Not in that clip. He talks even more about just how bad it is that these clubs are off the campus in the full clip. But here's my favorite part. He also says, hey, for a hot minute, the House version just narrowed this down to classroom instruction. And the sad thing about this is that you have to understand that this was adjustments made in the Texas House by Republican leadership. Now, I will also give the entire Republican legislature credit. They corrected their errors because conservatives in the Texas House stood up and said, we are going to make this bill better. They amended it several ways, and then they also went back in and fought to make it stronger. And the Senate said, you got to undo a lot of that stuff you did. Jeff Leach had this kind of all-encompassing amendment, and he was negotiating it with all the Democrats. And one of the things it did, which was undone, by the way, and this is a very good thing, is that it narrowed everything to classroom instruction. So, hey, you can't do all this woke stuff if it's classroom instruction. But if it's not specifically classroom instruction, you can do it. Right? Imagine saying you can't sexualize kids if it is as classroom instruction. What about the rest of the day that's not specifically classroom instruction in your K through 12 public school? Well, yeah, the ban doesn't apply there. So I want to go back to this. We often focus on, and in fact, later in the show, we're going to focus on specific legislation that fell short this session that Texas Public Policy Foundation did a great job bringing to light in this last week. But before we do, we should also acknowledge when we win, when we actually get the full, strong version of something that's really going to do something. And you have the left decrying this victory. I'm grateful for it. And this is just another example of that. So there you go. That is what is happening with SB 12 as liberal teachers just kind of wake up to the fact that, yeah, there's this bill that passed that really narrows our ability to indoctrinate kids pretty heavily. And speaking of that, as the legislative races heat up, you're going to have a number of these open seats that happen. And one of those open seats is Representative Stan Lambert is leaving. So Stan Lambert is leaving, who is one of the more liberal Republicans in the legislature from Abilene. He almost lost last election. Greg Abbott and others supported his opponent, Liz Case. And the person running to replace him is one of his senior advisors named Jay Hardaway. And Jay Hardaway was a senior advisor to Stan Lambert, maybe still is. I don't know if he's still on the payroll or not, and has done a number of other things. But Jay recently sat down with a local radio show, TV show. I don't know exactly what. I think it's a radio show that also has a podcast and has a YouTube channel. Sat down with them for a long conversation, and they talked about a bunch of stuff. Most of it was not super relevant. I mean, you learn about Jay's background and his business background and his family and where his kids go to school and what his wife does and all these things. But interestingly enough, at one point, school choice comes up in a discussion. And I want to say this. This is a very relevant clip in relation to what we just finished talking about with Senate Bill 12. So this is a local radio host who probably was on Stan Lambert's side, and he's asking Jay Hardaway about public schools and school choice and what just happened. So let's go to this clip.
We don't have to get into the granular policy things. To be candid, I think most people are kind of sick of the school choice conversation by now. But just broadly speaking, what do you think? Do you think that there's some positive things about that? Do you think there's also potential negative things about it?
I think it is safe to say that whenever the government tries to undertake anything, people should be, okay, but what if it doesn't work and then we can't undo it? Or what if, it leads to this? And so I think, especially in West Texas, but it's probably true of a lot of places, that you will find people across the political spectrum that are skeptical of anything big. And when the government does things, it's big. And so I definitely think that I think you're right that people maybe got a little tired of the back and forth. But I think that most people realize that situation from a policy standpoint is complicated.
Everything that happened this session regarding K through 12 education was a final breaking of the hold that teacher unions have on the public school system. And by the way, for would like to be Representative Jay Hardaway. I don't know if he knows this, but the public school system is really big. I don't know if he knows this, but in most of his district, maybe in every one of his districts, the public school system is probably the largest employer. It's big. It's really, really big. It's very, very strange that when asked about a small school choice program in comparison to his very big public school education system in his district alone.
America is at a crossroads. Now, more than ever, Texas must step up and lead the country. We don't have time to mess around. The only way to save America is with a strong Texas. You and I know this, but so do the enemies of life and liberty. Therefore, you and I have no choice but to stand up and fight. I'm Sarah Gonzalez, and to the enemies of liberty, I say, come and take it.
His answer is, we're really concerned if government's big. That is such a lazy position to hold and take. A program was created that says, hey, parents, if the very big public school government system that you are in is not serving your child well, you can apply for an education savings account and pick a different school, and money will follow your child, empowering the parent over the administrator. Okay? Now, guess what? Even if 50,000 families in Texas decide this, the vast majority of the kids are all still staying in the very, very big and much, much bigger traditional public school system. So Representative Hardaway's position of we should just be really concerned if there's big government. Out here in Abilene, we just don't like big government. That's why we're very concerned about education savings accounts. Doesn't concern us regarding all of the public schools. It just concerns us regarding the really small education savings account program compared to the very big public school traditional government program. That is his position. And that is not the type of tone and tenor taken by somebody who is going to come and be part of a majority coalition that does exist in the legislature that is trying to tackle and reform the public school system. It does not. It does not bode well for Jay Hardaway's likelihood to team up with parents and say, we want to empower parents as much as possible. Because if his definition of empowering parents is big government, and his definition of keeping all the money in one massive government education public school system is not big government, then his worldview is very different from that of a normal average Republican. So I'm just concerned with that general viewpoint. Now, SB 12, I told y'all, a good example of a bill that was watered down, but then strengthened back up because conservatives strengthened it back up, made it better. Conservatives in the Senate and the House teamed up to make it better. That's awesome. Now let's talk about an issue that I don't think is getting enough attention. I'm grateful that Mandy Drogan at Texas Public Policy Foundation hosted a conversation regarding this issue, and that is foreign influence on our public university system, specifically the nation of Qatar, who has come in and donated $450 million to Texas A&M University. And they didn't donate it. They didn't just say, hey, Texas A&M University, here's $500 million. They came in and said, we want to enter into a contract. And you can go to Texas Public Policy Foundation's YouTube channel and watch the entire conversation with Mandy Drogan. But what we are going to do today is look at two specific clips and hone in on some specific policy that you need to be aware of that exists and the need to make this one of the Republican policies we all focus on making sure get enacted next session. Let's go to this clip.
So you said that the federal government looked into this.
Correct.
And they're the ones that actually found, it sounds like, about $500 million more being spent.
Correct.
So then what happened?
Well, there are certain efforts currently at play trying to kind of combat this foreign influence in our schools. And for example, we saw last session several efforts to try to combat this. And one of them was a good step forward in the right direction, where there was the creation of a research security council. And in theory, this sounds like a great thing, and it is actually a great first step. And so what this bill calls for is for a council to come together and identify best practices to combat this issue. But simply identifying best practices is not enough when our national security is at risk. And also, Qatar is not listed on this. So the door is still wide open for Qatar to come and be involved with our research at Texas A&M. And on top of that, this is headed up by Texas A&M, which historically they have been the worst at reporting, according to the U.S. Department of Education investigation. So there's still a lot more work to be done here, and I would love to see Qatar be on that list of a designated hostile foreign nation.
Okay, I'm going to go back because there's a lot of things to unpack there. Because to be clear, I just can't imagine that the majority of people at Texas A&M, and not just I would bet 99% of people have no clue this is going on. Because you said it's just in a specific space. Say it again.
Well, a large chunk of this money is going directly towards the Texas Engineering Experiment Station.
Okay, so I just can imagine that the 90% of other people involved with the university that are not in the engineering space would have absolutely no clue that this is occurring. These contracts are occurring. But then in thinking we should be combating this, and you said that they formed a commission to study it. Wouldn't best practices just be don't enter into contracts with entities such as Qatar and others that fund radical terrorists that slaughter people?
Yeah, I think that would be the
the
most efficient move.
Like first committee meeting. Hey, y'all, we probably just shouldn't do these contracts.
Every now and then, a study or a commission is the right way to go. Sometimes we're literally talking about something that nobody has any idea what to do with, how exactly to handle. I'm trying to remember some specific instances this last session where I thought a study was appropriate, because I know there were a couple where we specifically had conversations. I would talk to a legislator, talk to a staffer, talk to some group, and we go, hey, maybe let's try to study this for the next 2 years. But I will say that it was few and far between where that was the right and appropriate course of action. It is the often desired action of almost every legislative body. If you can create a commission to look at something as opposed to stopping a bad thing from happening, you'd way rather do that. Nobody's super ticked. Any of the people that are against you stopping the bad thing from happening aren't super upset because you're basically winking and nodding at them that you can do this. And the people that really want to do something, you can at least go back to them and say, I created a commission to stop this thing from happening, right? So this is what the legislature opted to do this session. Let's go to this second clip where they just talk about it a little bit more.
The federal government did an investigation, found an additional $500 million, $500 million that is going to our public universities in contracts. These aren't donations out of the goodwill of their heart, but this is a contract. There is an exchange of goods and services and money expected. Okay, so that is happening, but you said there were legislators that brought forth legislation to stop what? What was the legislation in the previous legislative session that could have stopped or slowed down or at least opened up and provided more transparency for this?
Yeah, well, here at TBPF, we have created a bill, and this one wasn't, it didn't get passed, but we believe the best policy recommendations are, one, to put an outright prohibition on engaging in any gifts or contracts from a country designated as hostile to us. I think that's the first most important step. Second, we want to put transparency in this. So having universities report down to the dollar amount where they're getting their money and what it's for. Yeah. And then third, to put a penalty for noncompliance. Universities, they they're more likely to follow if there's
a financial penalty. Of course.
Yeah. So we believe those are the best policy recommendations. And going forward, we would love to see another bill similar to that.
Who carried that bill?
We had Representative Leo Wilson carry that bill.
Okay, awesome. And so then what happened?
There was another bill, House Bill 127, which is the Research Security Council, that took some language from Representative Leo Wilson's bill and added it into the original bill, but the final result was just this Research Security Council bill.
Okay, to look into it more, basically.
Correct. That's correct.
Did they pass a law? Did they pass it?
They did pass it.
So they passed a law to create a council to look into what we should do to deal with hostile foreign nations such as Qatar.
That's correct. But Qatar is not included in that bill. It's just the...
Wait. So not only did they not actually try and put up barriers or at least provide transparency into what's going on in the law.
Yeah.
They passed a law. So who is it for? China?
I think China, yeah. I mean, that's
but
clearly the
who's to
biggest
say
threat.
that China's not just buying everything from Qatar?
See, that's a valid question. That's something that I'm asking too, and I
was
want you to
Qatar
assess.
in the legislation to begin with?
It was in the legislation that Representative Leo Wilson had carried.
I don't want foreign governments coming in and buying our universities, paying to enter into contracts that direct them to study certain things. I don't want it to come from any foreign government, especially China. It makes sense that if you just, first of all, we didn't actually ban this from happening. We created a commission, I guess, to study it happening. And then we were like, yeah, and don't even study Qatar, which we know is entering into $450 million contracts with Texas A&M University. And I do appreciate the point that they made where they talked about the fact that this is headed up by Texas A&M and they're like literally one of the worst at reporting. So I wanted to bring this to y'all's attention because there is absolutely no way that higher education reform is not on the docket for next session. Many of you have followed the drama that has ensued over the last several weeks. Welsh was fired from Texas A&M University. They, of course, let him decide to leave, but it was a forced deciding to leave that occurred. This is a woke university president who literally chided a conservative student over her complaints that she was being forced to learn some gender wheel theory in a children's literature class. And then told her that a lot of people want to understand these radical gender theories so they can be future superintendents of our public school system. By the way, Representative Hardaway, or not Representative, desire to be Representative Hardaway from Abilene, like Texas A&M, that's big government. We give them a lot more money than what we're doling out to individual families. That's big government. And big government universities are trying to indoctrinate students with gender theories so they can go be future superintendents over big government K through 12 systems. This is a problem. Foreign influence is a problem. I appreciate the work the Texas Public Policy Foundation has done on this. We are going to have a holistic conversation, not only on this show, but across the state for the next year and a half about higher education reform in a major way. And we have an opportunity to do it like never before. Senator Brandon Creighton not being a senator is going to be a great loss to that institution. For higher education reform, it's going to be a great gain as he will be the next chancellor of Texas Tech University. We have a real opportunity to do reforms that get rid of all the garbage in our university systems and get our universities back to actually being institutions that develop leaders of our state, leaders that we should want to help influence the direction of our state. Right now, we are hoping and praying that all of these students that come out of Texas A&M that have taken 13 gender LGBT classes are not the future leaders of our state. We are praying that they never get to be superintendents. Let's get back to universities that we can freely send children to and know they are going to come out adults ready to lead and serve. Higher education reform is going to be a top priority of the next legislative session. It's going to be a major discussion point. Buckle up, because Republican activists are talking about it. The actual regents and chancellors are clearly talking about it. Texas Public Policy Foundation is talking about it. Legislators are talking about it. Everybody is discussing the fact that this needs to happen. So I think it should be on your radar because it's on mine. May God bless you, and may God bless Texas.